Hey, welcome to a special live edition of the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon, and I'm joined by Buckeye Scoop's Marc Givler, and we are here in anticipation of the start of the college football playoff ranking show. Obviously, Ohio State did not have the result that it wanted on Saturday, will fall from its number 2 spot, will fall out of the top 4, but I guess the question is going to be, how far will Ohio State fall? There certainly are some scenarios out there, far-fetched as they may sound, of where Ohio State could maybe sneak back in, but I would be getting my suntan lotion ready and be getting ready for the Rose Bowl. But, Marc, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good to be here. I've been watching your guys' playoff shows, and it's been really fun. So I'm kind of happy that the schedules worked out that I could jump on here and spell Tony and Tom for the night.
Yeah, Tony and Tom, they will be with me, I'm sure, on more shows this week, but having the boss man here is never a bad thing. And let me say, it has been a tremendous week in terms of following college football in general. Coaching changes along the way, recruiting fortunes changing. I mean, we can get into some of that on the back end of the rankings as the ranking show is just about to get underway on the Four Letter Network. But I mean, just before it gets going, have you seen just an off season like this one? And we're only not quite 2 days in.
No, I mean this is by far the craziest coaching search situation I've ever seen in my life. So Oklahoma's available, USC was available, LSU was available, Notre Dame's available, Florida was available. I mean, that's 5 of the top 8 to 10 jobs in the country, I think. If we, you know, parse that out and looked at the entire country, that's probably 5 of the top 10 jobs in the country. So the domino effect that's going to create, I mean, just have those 5 jobs available is incredible, but the domino effect that's going to create once they're all filled and how that affects assistant coaching movement and everything else that's going to affect is incredible. We're just getting started. I think the next couple of weeks are going to continue to be crazy.
Yeah, people see some of these big jobs fill and they don't necessarily look at the ripples that are created in the pond once that happens. And additionally, I mean, people aren't talking about Brent Pry going to Virginia Tech, but that has Penn State now without a DC. So Penn State is going to be a school that's going to be out looking for a DC. And, if you know other schools that may be looking for a DC here at some point, now you're going to have to compete against them. So, the moves are all interconnected and there's so much going on. And just the asking price for head coaches right now, we're seeing these 10-year, $95 million deals. Lincoln Riley, getting both of his houses paid for in Oklahoma, 500,000 above asking price, unlimited use of the jet. I mean, I'm sure he probably is going to get a couple Dodger season tickets thrown in there, some other perks and bennies. God, we just got in the wrong industry. I mean, we got in the right industry, but the wrong part of it.
Yeah, when I was doing the sport management branch, I was in the management branch and I should have got into coaching apparently. I
Exactly.
don't know. I don't have I don't have the temperament for it though, and quite frankly, I don't pity some of these guys with the 350 days a year of work and everything else. But it's getting stupid right now with the money. I mean, just look at Ryan Day, who I think we're expecting to sign an extension here, probably at some point in the not too distant future. A week ago, what are we thinking for Ryan Day? We're thinking maybe what 9 million a year. Maybe they push him to 10, and now you're seeing Mel Tucker gets $95 million. Brian Kelly's what 15 million a year. Was that actually confirmed? I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some numbers, but I was short of seeing a contract. I'm not sure. I mean, heck, even James Franklin signs an extension for what was that 770 or something like that, or
Yeah, it was like I think it was 85 million, but I don't
was
remember if it was
yeah.
over. Was it like 8 years or 10 years?
I don't
It
even
was some
know. I
little
mean, the numbers
crazy
are
money, but
the numbers are outrageous, and I think it's going to create, as we're still waiting for the rankings to drop here on the show. We're dealing with a case of where the haves and the have-nots are going to see an even wider chasm. And we can look at an Akron. How is an Akron going to be able to compete with even maybe a lower level Big Ten team at this point? Let alone what SC has done, what LSU has done, what Oklahoma is going to have to do, whether it's Brent Venables or somebody else. I mean, what's going to happen at that point? Oh, and by the way, too, just transfer portal. As Holy Sal just dropped in, 62 plus players hit the portal today. I mean, Ohio State's only had one get in there so far, and here come the rankings right now. A&M, Louisiana, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Houston are your first five. I'm going to type and talk, so this is one of the places of where I will show some of my weakness as I can barely walk and chew gum. But your thoughts there. I mean, USL or Louisiana being 24th without its head coach Billy Napier taking the Florida job.
Yeah, and then A&M in there. I think that's probably key for Alabama, especially as we get into the what if scenario of what if Alabama loses to Georgia, but there's some chaos elsewhere, and maybe those 3 and 4 seeds are open, or at least that 4 seed is open to potentially a 2-loss team. And I just feel like A&M's been overrated all year. They seem to they got their one great game in against Alabama, I guess, but that's probably a notable thing there. And then Kentucky, they beat Arkansas, right? So there's Arkansas. They didn't play Kentucky, so that's I guess relevant there for Alabama that those schools are hanging in there. And
We
then
have
of course Houston's going to
Clemson,
play Cincinnati.
Clemson, San Diego State, NC State, Utah, and Wake are your next five. I'm fixing a typo on one of the boards right now,
Yeah.
so bear with me. Clemson being up to 20. Would you believe that Clemson would be ranked after the start that the Tigers had this year?
Took them a while, but yeah, they turned things around. I think obviously not playing in a very difficult conference this year with the ACC. Even
I have your mic cutting in and out a little bit right now. I'm not sure if people can hear Marc at the moment. As let me bring him back in. I think we had a bad connection there. Are you
there
back
we
with us?
go.
Okay,
they don't like me as much as Tony and Tom. Apparently, they say, oh, "Get this guy out of here. This isn't going well."
right. I am just about to change the first board here. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I don't.
just
Yeah,
back to Clemson. I mean, that was something that I thought they were dead and done for this this season based on how they started out, and now that they've rebounded a little bit, but I wouldn't say that that's a team that's necessarily figured everything out.
no, I mean it's a process, obviously. There, I'm sorry, my phone is going off here. I'm trying to not be totally obnoxious about it, but there is a lot of recruiting stuff going on right now. But yeah, it's an interesting next group there. Um, Utah there at 17 now, they're starting to move up. I think the one thing that's interesting to me, looking forward here a few minutes into the future, is how far back is Oregon going to be from like with Ohio State and Oregon? Like, what's the distance? I think everyone's talking about will Ohio State be behind or ahead of Notre Dame, which I don't think. I think they'll be behind Notre Dame. But how much gap are we going to see maybe between Ohio State and Oregon when we start looking at like the total pie in the sky, like 1% scenario that Ohio State could actually backdoor their way into this thing?
Right. And here, here's 16 through 11, Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, Oklahoma, Iowa, who's going to be representing half the Big Ten, BYU, and Michigan State at 11. I'm trying to bust through these as quickly as I can, trying to pause the television where I have to be able to type. What happens? All right, here we go. Oregon is 10.
Okay.
Um, I'm sure everybody who's watching there's dummy, we know this. We're moving along faster than you are. I'm a couple minutes behind as I'm typing stuff out. Baylor is 9. Just kind of trying to catch up. Ole Miss is 8.
Oh, I think that's significant. We'll get to that in a second.
I'm gonna get this board posted.
Unless you just want me to talk through this,
Yes,
I
go
can
ahead.
talk
Yeah,
about
go
why.
ahead and talk through all of this. I mean, people are sending me all sorts of messages right now. I don't know what is going on at the moment. Let me.
Well, let's talk about that 10-9-8 real quick. Let's talk about Oregon, Baylor, Ole Miss. They have insulated Ohio State from Oregon and Baylor by doing that. Now, we can sit here and argue, well, now if
Ohio
Oregon and
State is
Baylor,
7. Ohio State is
yeah,
7.
they've insulated them from them. Now, again, Oregon and Baylor win. They're conference champions now. They certainly could move them ahead of Ohio State, but that sneaking Ole Miss in there is kind of a buffer between Ohio State and Oregon and Baylor is kind of fascinating to me. That's interesting. I think it does provide them some cover to keep Ohio State ahead of one or both of those teams if they win.
Right. I will get this fixed here in a second. I don't know what the heck just happened there. I mean, a lot of people wanted to see Ohio State maybe 6th if that was going to happen. I mean, I thought that maybe was going to be a bit of a stretch to get them to that point. People just picking really the wrong time to message me right now. Let me just say that. I'm just getting blown up. Save as copy. So yeah, with what do you think based on what we're seeing there? I mean, what level of chaos are we going to need to see Ohio State potentially move up to be able to pull off a surprise? Ohio State's drawing dead. They can't do anything at this point. They're not playing. I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that it's going to be downright nearly impossible for them to get there. Do you disagree with that?
No, I mean, no, not. Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. 7's a bad number. I didn't expect 5 necessarily, but I thought maybe 6. At 7, you're behind Notre Dame, and Notre Dame, neither of you are going to play. So what's going to happen this weekend that would justify Ohio State jumping over Notre Dame when neither team has played? A Michigan blowout, this is kind of weird. A Michigan blowout of Iowa. I mean, does that help? Probably. Or do you just say, you know what, burn it all to the ground? Iowa crushes Michigan. Georgia crushes Alabama. Cincinnati loses. Oklahoma State loses. Oregon loses. And now the committee's head spinning. And it's just like, okay, let's just put Ohio State and Alabama in there because they're talented. They're talented 2-loss teams, and we think they're more talented than Notre Dame. We think they're more talented than Oklahoma State or Baylor, and just go with that, and just throw in Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama. Like that might be the path, at this point is to just kind of do something like that. But I'm at a loss here for how they're gonna hurdle Notre Dame and still get in. I'm not trying to mumble. I'm just like, I'm trying to run the scenario.
It would have to be the most inside of inside straights. I mean, like legitimately, It would have to go runner, like a 3-outer where you'd have to hit it. Georgia's one, big shock there. We kind of knew that one was going to be there. Do we see Michigan 2? Do they fly up? Yes, and yes, we do. They're not even going to make us wait for it. Michigan's 2. They take over Ohio State's spot in the playoffs. So
now that's interesting too, though. Now if Michigan, let's say Michigan beats Iowa like 31-10, and so you've already got them 2. Presumptively at that point, they're not going to go lower than 2. They're either going to be 2, or maybe they could get to 1 if Georgia lost. Does that help Ohio State? That if I'm kind of torn on that Big Ten championship game, because part of me is like, well, if Iowa beats Michigan, you have this added chaos of all these 2-loss teams, and maybe the committee just says,
that could also knock Ohio State potentially out of the Rose Bowl, though. If they get into a point of where no Big Ten teams get in, and then you put the champion out in the Rose Bowl. I mean, I think you could still get 2 Big Ten teams in New Year's Six bowls, but then you're looking at the Fiesta, you're looking at the Peach, and I think you're going to get a lot of people who will still travel to the Rose Bowl for being the Rose Bowl, even with all the hurt that's going on in Buckeye Nation right now. I think people still, especially us old timers, love what the Rose Bowl stands for, but put them out in the Fiesta for the 900th time, or put them in the Peach. I mean, yes, there are a lot of Ohio State alum in the Southeast, and I think that they'll go, but I think both of those would probably be much lesser draws.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly that is certainly a good point, and as we talk about, especially with the bowl system kind of hurting anyway, and just kind of the whole, lackadaisical approach to the non-playoff games at this point. I think it does more than ever. I think we are having to look at the money situation and things like that. But man, is there a scenario where there's not a Big Ten team? Like, if Iowa beats
I
Michigan,
mean, I was what,
is Michigan
13th?
still out? They're going to keep Michigan and Ohio
It,
State out. They're going to keep,
Cincinnati is
like,
4.
yeah. I mean, Notre Dame does Notre Dame get in over that? I mean, it's even if it's a two-loss team, it's hard for me to. I mean, I think no matter, let's take off the homer goggles for a minute. I don't know how you argue the Big Ten isn't at least the second best conference in college football this year. They're not going to be represented. So with that in mind, it's like, okay, so who do you root for if you're Ohio State? Do you root for just Michigan to handle business, and then you just make the case that you're the second best team in maybe the best conference, maybe just in maybe the best conference, and there's not going to be a lot of strong candidates maybe at 4. I mean, I think obviously a huge thing to this is, I think, more than anything, I think Cincinnati's got to lose to Houston. Um, but man, yeah, they like Oklahoma State, don't they?
They do like Oklahoma State,
That's a
and
little surprising, I think.
right. And then let me jump back a page. So with that, I mean, you're sitting with Baylor at 9. So if Baylor beats Oklahoma State, you would still think that Baylor being able to play a game, being able to be a conference champion, I mean that that locks Ohio State out in terms of that one. So I don't know if that spot's there. I mean, if chalk holds, Georgia's in, Michigan's in. You think Cincinnati's in at that point. The question is what happens between Georgia and Alabama? Where do we see things go from there? If Georgia beats Alabama, does that open the door for the Big 12 champion? Does that open the door for Notre Dame? I mean, Ohio State needs a situation of where you roll the dice. Iowa beats Michigan, which I don't see happening. But if Iowa beats Michigan and it's an ugly game, and they don't look that impressive, flying up from 13, uh, 13. That's a pretty big ask to get to that point. So does Michigan stay ahead of Ohio State just due to the head to head? Because we know what this committee thinks of head to head. So even if even if Iowa beats Michigan, Michigan and Ohio State could both be sitting right there on that next tier, both out. I mean, theoretically. I mean, I don't know if Iowa beats Michigan, how you keep a 2-loss Michigan team in there when you sit there and you look at Alabama, and yes, Alabama had no business beating Auburn in that game. If Tank Bigsby does not go out of bounds there, they run 40 more seconds off the clock. He was going for the first down. He was making a football play. He's a football player. That's what he's supposed to do. But Alabama, certainly, I've talked to a lot of Alabama fans who have said, I don't want this team having any part of the playoffs. If Brian Robinson can't run the ball, I mean, we don't know how healthy he's going to be going into the UGA game. We saw what happened without Jamison Williams when he got tossed for the targeting on the special teams play. They are, John Mechie is not having a John Mechie type season. So that's a very limited team.
Yeah, I think Georgia's got to, if Georgia just, they got to beat Alabama by, I don't know, a couple touchdowns. I think I don't think you want there to be any doubt about that. I think 14, 20 points, if they can do that. um I am so torn on that Michigan Iowa game, because here's the deal. If Iowa beats Michigan, then Utah absolutely has to be Oregon, because here's what's going to happen. If Iowa beats Michigan and Oregon beats Utah, you've got 3 2-loss teams there, and talking about Michigan, Oregon, and Ohio State. And Ohio State's lost to the other 2-loss team. Like, there's no shot in that scenario. Like, there's no chance that they're going to take the 2-loss team that lost to the other 2-loss teams and put that one in the playoff. So in that sense, I think Michigan's got to just beat Iowa as badly. As I talk through this more and more, Michigan's got to beat Iowa as badly as possible, cement themselves as the number 2 seed, and then you can sit there and say, well, lost to the number 2 team on the road in the snow, had the early season loss to Oregon, and played a pretty dominant, 10 other wins in there. And that's the only, that 1-2% path or whatever we want to call it is that. But again, I go back. Maybe I could be totally overreacting to this. I mean, people in comments can kind of tell me I'm crazy about this, but why is Ole Miss in there at 8? Like, if not to provide some type of insulation for Ohio State and Notre Dame against Baylor and Oregon. Why?
Well, yeah.
Especially Baylor. Especially Baylor.
I mean, it's certainly Ole Miss in there certainly provides that win for Alabama to prop them up. It certainly helps the SEC. And I hate being Mr. Tinfoil Hat here, and I'm going to bring us back out on a 2-shot in a second. But I certainly believe that there's something to be said about having Ole Miss in the top 10 at this point helps validate Alabama. If Alabama loses a close one, to say, well, they're certainly far and away the best 2-loss team. Last thing, I did bring up 538's college football predictions. Ohio State is listed as a 3% chance of making the playoff. I haven't started really playing with the numbers. If Michigan wins, Ohio State falls to 2%. If I take that off and if I put Iowa on the win, that moves Ohio State up to a 5% chance. Now, I don't know necessarily what's going into Nate Silver and his crew's whole, their whole mindset on this, but I mean, it's something worth playing around with. I find it to be more entertaining, more interactive than the All-State football prediction, whatever, on ESPN, which always seems to be a week behind and makes little sense to me how they get to their methodology.
Yeah, I don't get that unless, again, it's got to be a corresponding Oregon loss.
Well, if we put
Like, if Michigan loses, Oregon has to lose too, or else again we're going to have this 3-team scenario where you've got 11-2 Michigan, 11-2 Oregon, who's now a conference champion, and 10-2 Ohio State, who's lost to Michigan and Oregon. I just don't know how that would ever.
An Oregon loss moves Ohio State up to 6. So right now I've got an Iowa win, an Oregon loss. Let's see.
Okay.
Let me see. A Georgia win does nothing. A Georgia loss does nothing. So apparently the SEC doesn't mean anything there. Ohio State's at 6% under this. Let's have Cincinnati lose. That moves Ohio State down to 5%. A Cincinnati win moves Ohio State up to 7%. And then let's just go to the Big 12. An Oklahoma State win moves Ohio State back down to 5%. A Oklahoma State loss to Baylor moves Ohio State up to 9%. Again, inside straight. Inside straight. I mean, and there's some Michigan fans who have found our show, and thank you for finding our show, and thank you for trying to set us straight for talking about some wild scenarios. But 2007, anybody? 2007? And I know the difference, and Mark and I talked a little bit before the show. 2007 was over the course of a couple of weeks. It wasn't a case of where Championship Saturday had to go nutso. I mean, it was, it took a little bit of time for all these dominoes to fall, but we've come up with a scenario with a Georgia win, a Cincinnati win, an Oak State loss, and an Iowa win, and an Oregon loss. We've got Ohio State up to 9%, so a 1 in 10 chance at that point. I think that percentage is a little high, but what do you think? I mean, Sage Ohio says we're not in. Ed Rogers says Oregon will lose. I'll go out and tell you this. I've already started talking to friends out in California about the Rose Bowl. So that's where my mindset is. I think that's where Ohio State's going to end up. But in order to do that, you're playing the dangerous game of an Iowa win, which I don't know many Ohio State fans that are going to go out and openly root for Michigan. So you do run the risk, though, if Iowa wins, that it could all kind of fall apart. Stephen Piper already wanting to talk a little bit recruiting. Stephen, I'm going to put you in the queue. We will get to this. We're not going to do this whole show here. I know Marc has got some recruiting content coming up here soon as well, so I don't want him to necessarily scoop himself here at Buckeye Scoop. But you kick in with the super chat, we'll give you a little something something.
Yeah, I can dive into the branch thing real quick. I am less confident that Ohio State's getting Zion Branch today than I was yesterday. I don't think it's decided yet, but I think I'm starting to sense a little bit of anxiety talking to Ohio State sources today. That the Riley thing was a pretty big deal. Obviously, he did visit Oklahoma over the summer, so it's not like this is totally out of left field. There's a relationship there between the Branch family and Lincoln Riley from when he was at Oklahoma. So that it's not where I'd like it to be if I was Ohio State right now. I mean, I think that's moved toward USC a little bit the last day or two. And then you see again, I don't if Zion goes to USC, I think Zachariah follows him to USC. And if Zion goes to Ohio State, I think Zach follows him to Ohio State. I think that's kind of where we're at right now. But got in-homes coming. They were in to see Hero Canoe today. Going to see Caden Curry on Thursday. I'm going to see a bunch of guys this week. I know they were around with they were down in Arizona with Ryan Day and Corey Dennis and those guys were
Keon
in
Grays,
Arizona.
yeah.
Yep. So they've been making the rounds, and let's just see how things settle here the next few days. Because I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, they're going to USC now. I think we've done enough of these down the stretch. I know I always think back to Baron Browning, and everyone just like, oh, he's going to Alabama. Everyone jumped off, and I just let's give this a day or two. Let's let some of these in-homes wear off and happen, and everything else. But yeah, it feels like the branches are more receptive to USC than maybe I would have even expected them to be when Riley was hired.
Yeah, the perfect example of everybody jumping off the bandwagon at the last second and having to hang tight was Von Bell.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was a crazy morning. That's probably best for another show, but that was a fun morning.
A lot of people weighing in on Ohio or on Iowa, Michigan. I will talk about that more probably on Friday for the second Big Me Kickoff show of the week. We'll go over some of the championship games there. But as we kind of go through this, I mean, it's just me, Tim, talking about Ohio or California for the Branch brothers. I mean, yeah, it's certainly there's a lot to USC. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, great weather, so on and so forth. But where are you going to know where your development's going to be? Because you don't know. I mean, we don't know what the SC staff is going to look like entirely. We know Alex Grinch is going out there to be the DC. It's not completely filled into my knowledge, but we don't know what's going on. Everybody wants to see all these grand changes with an Ohio State staff, and recruits want consistency. Recruits want to know who is going to coach them. They don't want to have three position coaches over the span of 4 years. They don't want to have that. So, you have to kind of you have to weigh everything against itself. You have to sit there and say, okay, well, if you're going to make some changes, you're going to maybe see some things kind of not come together in 22 the way that you would think. I mean, that's just, I've been covering this for a long time. That's just my view on that. And again, I'm kind of getting us away from the rankings.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in real quick because I mentioned this on the morning show with Tom the other day, or I think it ran this morning. Was I'm not so sure that right now Ohio State needs to be as worried about the coaching carousel in terms of who USC's hiring, who Notre Dame's hiring, who LSU's hiring. I think the biggest thing that can derail Ohio State right now is not having answers on their own staff. I think that's the thing that could lose them a kid or two down the stretch that they're feeling good about right now, is if they either make the wrong choice on something like that, or if they, even worse, I think, is just not having answers. I think that's really the concern more than anything. Yes, could Lincoln Riley take a kid to USC like a Zion Branch that they don't? Yes, something like that could happen. But I think in terms of a large scale, like losing 3, 4, 5 kids they thought they were getting, I think that would have to come almost from within with their own uncertainty. I think that's what they've got to make sure they've got under control right now, is that they're telling these kids whatever is going to happen. They're making sure that these kids are not left in totally in the dark on where the direction of the defense is going.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to answer that, and it's it's one of those things of where everybody wants to see Ryan Day make all of these decisions without a plan in place. And I go back to Hunt for Red October and the line that that's delivered on the I believe it was on the aircraft carrier. It's like the Russians don't take a dump without a plan. And you've gotta make sure that you have a plan in place. And I mean, I've said it once and I'll say it again. I think we're going to see some turnover on the staff. I'm not ready to say who I think is going to go, but I think there needs to be a plan. We are what, 15 days from National Signing Day, from early National Signing Day, so you just kind of have to see what's there. But as we mentioned earlier, Penn State's now in the market for a DC. If people believe that's a direction Ohio State needs to go in, there's a lot of stuff going on there. For anybody who's joining us here now that we're a half hour in, let's welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. Here are the rankings: Texas A&M, Louisiana, Kentucky, Arkansas, Houston round out the first five. Clemson, San Diego State, NC State, and Utah get us to 17. Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, Oklahoma, Iowa, BYU, Michigan State, Oregon, and then inside the top 10 we've got Baylor, Ole Miss. And then we go the other way. Let me drop off that. And Ohio State's at 7. Notre Dame's at 6. Okie State's at 5. And then your top 4 who are in, you've got Georgia 1, Michigan State 2, Alabama 3, Cincinnati 4. Now, you have a couple of schools in Notre Dame. Notre Dame does, they don't have a head coach at this point. I would be curious to see what the committee thinks about that situation. I mean, they can't go out and play a game. Jack Swarbrick, the AD, came out and said, we're not really about titles. We're not here really worried about putting an interim tag on somebody. Do you think that, we're really speculating here at this point. Do you think that there's some concern in their mind? Notre Dame doesn't have the greatest record when it comes to the college football playoff. They have gotten drilled the couple times that they've been in there. It's not been pleasant. So do you take a cautionary view of Notre Dame based on that situation? If you believe the reports that are out there, and I believe it was Dennis Dodd who came out of CBS Sports saying that Notre Dame would be patient to wait on Luke Fickell, do you think that maybe hurts Notre Dame's case?
It could. I mean, look, I was surprised Oklahoma State was all the way up at 5. So I think that a little bit of that is the committee saying, yeah, let's get Notre Dame out of there as far as being the next team up. I think a lot of people assumed Notre Dame would be the next team up. They're not. It's Oklahoma State, and certainly you would have a hard time believing that Oklahoma State could beat Baylor on Saturday and drop out. They would obviously be the first team in line still at that point. So I think it's something to consider. And again, maybe Notre Dame has a coach in a few days. Maybe they just hire Marcus Freeman, and this is all a moot point come the final rankings. But if they don't have their coaching situation figured out, I think someone on the message board said this. So I'm stealing this idea from somebody, but someone brought up that they take injuries into account, and if you can do that, if you could take a key injury into account, why couldn't you take into account the lack of the absence of the winningest coach in school history? I mean, didn't Kelly set the wins record this year?
He did.
I mean, so why couldn't you take that into account? I mean, at the end of the day, the committee can do whatever it wants. I mean, it can, if Utah beats Oregon by 100 on Saturday, the committee could say, well, Utah's crushed Oregon twice. Let's put them all the way up at 4. I mean, they can do whatever they want. So I don't, I think it could certainly factor in. And it's a weird thing where if Cincinnati loses, conventional wisdom might say that helps Notre Dame, but does it help Notre Dame? Because they lost to Cincinnati. Now they're both one-loss teams without a conference championship. And now if you're Notre Dame, you didn't lose to an undefeated top 3 or 4 team. You lost to what do you think Cincinnati drops to? 9, 10? I mean,
yeah,
it cheapens that loss for Notre Dame. And again, I keep looking at this and I wonder if it gets to a situation where you're talking two-loss Big 12 champion, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and then like a two-loss Alabama. Does the committee just, instead of trying to like freaking sort that out, which would be an absolute mess to try and sort out, does the committee just say, nah, let's put in Ohio State and Alabama? They're the two most talented teams.
I'm 538 just updated their numbers based on the new things that have come out, and the numbers are not as good for Ohio State at this point. I'm sitting here kind of
Yeesh.
playing around with what they have here because currently, without any games in there, Ohio State's at a little bit less than a 1% chance. Again, hitting the extreme crazy inside straight. But we, as we sit there and we kind of juggle with a couple of things. I mean, I can get Ohio State up to, I can get them up to 2 or 3% or so, just based on certain tumblers. But again, it's probably not going to happen, folks. It's probably not going to happen. But that's what happens. You lose to your arch rival. You lose in the final game of the regular season, and you just kind of have to, you're going to have to move forward with it. Now, it does bring a question of how motivated do you think Ohio State is for a meaningless exhibition? Because I love hearing people calling the bowl games. I grew up loving the bowl games. I mean, the bowl games were fantastic. I grew up on the West Coast, got to go to the Rose Bowl as a kid. I love the bowl games, but it isn't far off by saying that they are meaningless exhibitions. If you're not playing for the college football playoff, it has rendered every other game kind of pointless. I mean, how much does Ohio State get up for it? And this isn't talking about, will this player opt out or that player opt out? Will the Michigan coaches popping off and talking about how soft Ohio State was, will that piss them off? Will that be enough to motivate some guys to get out there and just try to end this on a better note?
I would hope so. Just I think that would be a good that'd be a good value or feature to have of these kids. I think it would reflect well on the team and kind of where their mindset is going into the offseason. We've seen it before a little bit. I think that 2015 team that lost the Michigan State game, and we kind of saw. Now, obviously, that was in season, but we saw that carry over, and they kind of dismantled Notre Dame there. I think was that the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
But so I would hope so. I think partially will be dependent upon the opponent. You're the guy on this. I don't do a lot of the bowl projection stuff as far as like who's going to go where. I know you guys spend a lot of time on that. I know Kevin, you've always spent a lot of time looking into that. But like who would their opponent be? So if they're going to play Utah.
Yeah, I was going to
Maybe,
say. I mean, if they
you
get
know,
if they get the Pac-12 champion,
but if they get Oregon in a rematch,
if you get Oregon in a rematch, I mean, but Oregon could sit there and he could see a lot of guys say, well, Kayvon Thibodeau, what does he have to prove at that point? I mean, if he's been banged up for large parts of the season, I mean, you could sit there and yes, Oregon beat Ohio State without Kayvon Thibodeau the first time. I'm well aware of that, but you sit there and you put them in there. I mean, the Pac-12 can wave the banner of we're the conference of champions. They're just as concerned about winning a surfing national championship as they are a football championship. I mean, it's just, I'm not convinced that, I mean, the hiring of Lincoln Riley at SC is a good move for the conference, but I still think that Cal and Stanford and some of these other schools, they're not as concerned, and that's nothing against David Shaw. I think David Shaw is a tremendous coach, but they're just not that interested in it. So you could end up with two teams that are largely disinterested in the game. I mean, I think that for Ohioans or kids, at least from the Midwest, who've watched the Rose Bowl growing up, there might be something to it. I made the argument of Chris Olave is a California kid. Yeah, he grew up watching the Rose Bowl, but he's also a first-round pick, and I'm sure he's going to have a team of advisors telling him all the reasons not to play in that game. So, that could be an interesting situation as well.
Yeah, so I have like two concerns for the bowl game. It They are struggling at numbers right now with numbers at linebacker. and they are struggling with numbers right now. I won't say struggle, but they don't have a lot of depth at receiver right now. Now what they have is incredible at receiver, but if Olave and Wilson were to opt out, I mean, you're down to just a few guys. I do wonder about that for bowl prep and bowl game, and how that could impact things, especially at linebacker, because I mean, it was pretty much two or three guys as they were down to on
There's a
Saturday,
reason you're
and
running a 4-2-5 and you're playing Cade Stover at linebacker.
I mean, and then I don't want to put anyone in the portal before they're in the portal. I don't want to get into all that too much, but it's like, okay, what does someone like Taraja Mitchell, who clearly got replaced by the middle of the season and was not playing, you know, is he going to go through all the bowl practices and play in the Rose Bowl? Is he going to reassess his situation? He can take that free year or whatever he got last year. And at that point, if he decides he's going to do that, you're not playing in the Rose Bowl, probably, right? I mean, you're not if you know you're leaving, even if you don't announce it until January, if you know you're leaving, why would you go out and risk injury in a game to sabotage you at the next place? So I look at some of those situations and I'm like, okay, how are they going to, not just get through a 60-minute game, but like, how are you going to prepare for that game? Like, you still have to practice.
Thanks for the super chat, Mike Palmer. Opting out of bowl games is a trend, but I think some teams are more susceptible than others. Any guess on whether one or more NFL-bound OSU players opt out of a bowl game? I kind of put opting out like I do transferring. You can't unring a bell if you attach somebody's name to it. It just kind of sticks. So I'm hesitant. Ohio State certainly has a couple of guys that have first round grades, and they both play in the same position group. Now it's a question of whether or not they decide to play or not. And I know that fans view it as a personal affront when a player's like, I don't want to play. Well, how can you desert the troops? How can how can you do all of that? But you're dealing with a decision for millions and millions of dollars. Let's remember, Jalen Smith got hurt playing against Ohio State in a Fiesta Bowl at Notre Dame, and slid in the draft, and his career certainly never really took off. He had some good moments with the Cowboys, and then he got moved to the Packers, and he never saw any playing time there. So you're dealing with a lot there. But could you see players that maybe aren't first rounders just opting out? Just some guys that are just like, I'm just not into this. I mean, I think some of those would be guys that would be kind of on their way to the portal or whatever. But I would like to say that Ohio State's culture work and everything Ohio State does with the culture, I think that these guys genuinely enjoy playing for each other. That small unit cohesion, that all the Tim Kite stuff under Urban Meyer, and all the studies in the military of you're not fighting for the flag as much or whatever, you're fighting for the guy in the foxhole next to you. I think that there's something to be said about that, but I don't, I think Denzel Ward made the right decision when he opted out. And I think that if somebody chooses to opt out here, case by case situation, there are going to be scenarios that's the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, just to give a simple answer to the question, my guess is that someone would. I just law of averages. They've got several guys who have an NFL draft future on this team. The law of averages would dictate to me that they're going to have someone opt out. Have I heard specifically from anyone yet? No. But I think they're probably obviously going to wait and see how this coming weekend shakes out, just to make sure. You don't want to opt out of a bowl game and then find out that the 2% parlay hits on Saturday, and now
Right.
you're in the college football semifinal. But here's the thing: like, could you blame Chris Olave? I'm not putting him as an opt out right now, but this guy gave Ohio State 12 more games than he probably should have,
Right.
for being honest. I don't know that Chris Olave coming back this year did anything for his draft stock at all. He ended up being the third leading receiver on the team, right? I mean, I find it hard to believe that his draft stock took off this year. So, would someone like that opt out? Could you blame someone like that? No. And then you look at some of these other guys. We've got a couple guys on the line who I'm sure are weighing their options right now. So, but yeah, I mean, I would just law of averages would dictate to me that at least one person does. But I think Ohio State, historically has done a really good job. Now they've been in the playoffs a few times, so obviously guys aren't opting out of playoff games. At least we're not at that point yet. But I do think Ohio State's done a pretty good job historically of having their guys play. That was a few years ago. They had a lot of the guys that could have opted out that decided to play in the bowl game. But yeah, I would guess at least one person does.
Austin Cooper making the comment that they won't even play in the Rose Bowl. That's for the Big Ten runner up. You guys are third. That's not how it works. It's not for the Big Ten runner up. It's based on, basically after the top four teams are placed into the tournament, then there are certain variables in there, but the bowls pick who it is that they want. This isn't a situation that there are tie-ins. Like the Sugar Bowl has the tie-in that it's going to be SEC versus Big 12 if it's not in the playoff rotation, and then you get to pick from there. I guarantee you that the Rose Bowl is all about having Ohio State coming out there if that is available to them. If the Big Ten does not send a team to the college football playoff, the Big Ten champion, not runner up, the Big Ten champion goes to the Rose Bowl. So, Austin, nice try, but you're wrong. You're wrong
Yeah,
on that one.
so Iowa either wins and goes to the Rose Bowl, or Michigan wins and then Ohio State goes to the Rose. Like no one's taking 3-loss Iowa uh, over Ohio State this year. That's not going to be a thing.
Right. Caleb asking back to recruiting again. And I knew this would happen. We would get some recruiting questions. If the Branch brothers most likely leaving, does that improve the chances with Nwakpa?
See, I'm kind of flip flopping here because for most of the last year, I was a little skeptical they would get both Branch and Wampa, and not even because they're identical players. They're actually not. They've actually, Branch is kind of more your Jordan Fuller, Josh Proctor kind of free safety, and Wampa's been kind of recruited as a bullet. I don't actually, but that being said, I don't actually think that's going to improve chances with Wampa. Just because, again, I don't think they've been recruiting them to play the exact same role. I think I think it's going to be interesting to see how Wampa would process some of this if that's indeed what happens. I still think people need to take a deep breath for just a second on this and let this kind of settle. I don't think they're gone to USC just yet, but yeah, I mean, quick answer is not really.
Well, I was going to say, how many times has Hero Canoe been gone? And obviously, there's concern that with this, and he's living in California. But remember, he's a German national. I mean, he's come out, he's lived in California a year plus to play a couple years at Rancho Santa Margarita Christian Academy, and
You just combined 5 Southern California schools on that one, by the way.
yeah, but it's something like that. He, I think the bigger people are ready to write these guys off at the first downturn, and there's a lot that goes on. I mean, he's coming out of an in-home the visit from Ryan Day and Larry Johnson, so if anything, right now is probably going to be the time he's going to be riding the highest on Ohio State, just coming out of the visit, guys coming cross country to come see him, spend time with he and his mom. So, I don't, I don't think people should necessarily be immediately reactionary when it comes to these things. Give it a moment to breathe. It's just like I don't put too much credence into when a kid is coming right off of a visit and he's like, I couldn't see myself playing anywhere else. Well, did you commit? Are you done? No?
Yeah.
Then that doesn't mean anything to me.
Yep. Yeah, things have a tendency to wear off after a few days, and they get together with their parents or whoever is helping them with the decision, and they take a more rational approach to things versus whatever emotions they were feeling during the visits and things like that. So yeah, it's not moving in the right direction, I don't think, for the Branch brothers right now. But again, I think there's still look at what's happened in the last 48 hours in the coaching community. So to think anything's over yet, or good or bad, to think anything's a lock for Ohio State right now, or that anything's totally out of their reach right now, I just think is a little short-sighted. I just think things are going to look a lot different in 3 days from now than they did 3 days ago, and some of that might be good for Ohio State, some of it might be bad. But we'll see what happens. These in-homes, they're important. Look, and who knows how Ohio State's approaching this. That's one thing I'm kind of be digging in this week is how are they approaching some of these questions about the defensive staff, Ryan Day's NFL future. I don't think Ryan Day is going anywhere, but of course that's out there. I think Bill Green said it very well today. He thinks a lot of schools are using the NFL stuff with Day, the defensive uncertainty with their defensive staff against them right now. How are they answering that? Is honesty the best policy? It might be. It seems counterintuitive. We have watched some very dishonest things happen the last couple of days. But we'll go back. I mentioned Baron Browning at the beginning. We were talking about some of this. Luke Fickell was asked basically to promise Baron Browning that he was going to be there when he was recruiting Baron in Texas, and could not do it. He did not promise Baron Browning because he knew that he was probably going to be taking a head coaching job sooner than later. And I think the initial reaction on that from the Brownings was to kind of like go, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean you can't promise you're going to be here? But after that got processed for a day or two, I think the honesty was appreciated. And of course they landed Baron Browning.
Right. I want to jump on Ed Rogers' comment there about Iowa travels really well when we're talking about bowl games. Absolutely. They shut down the entire state. Anybody who isn't an Iowa State person or, is going to the bowl game. Absolutely. But here's the problem. Nobody turns on the TV for Iowa. Iowa may sit there and fill its allotment of tickets and buy half the allotment of the other school and have 10,000 fans walking around outside the stadium. But that's it. That's it. They don't turn on television sets. And these giant contracts that are paid for by TV don't care about butts and seats. They care about television sets turned on. So what Iowa does in terms of travel is really inconsequential when it comes to the decisions when the networks are involved in it and they're trying to recoup astronomical checks that have been written for these broadcast rights. That's just my view as somebody who worked in television.
No, I think that's just true in sports nowadays. Everyone focuses on the attendance or whatever, but the real money's in the TV.
A lot of people in here saying that Ohio State needs to sell Hero Canoe on German Village in Central Ohio. I don't know if Schmitz or Hofbrauhaus is going to get it done, but there are a couple really good German places there that nobody talks about. And I don't know if I want to talk about them because I don't want to wait for a tape.
And are they sponsoring the show? So, no. I mean, then.
Well, Alpine, we'll talk.
Yeah. If I were Hero, what I would be asking about is, I say this jokingly because you're not allowed to do this until they're signed. So I'm not suggesting Ohio State commit a major infraction, but with Hero, it'd be funny. Can you get an NIL deal and get free rent at one of those nice German Village townhomes that are like $1 million?
Yeah, I mean that would be something. I mean,
some realty company can get them on an NIL deal for some free rent. That's what I'd be looking at.
Sage, Ohio, farmers don't get ESPN. No, they just don't have time to watch it because they're working from before sun up till after sundown. So, Dale, good job, guys. Thanks, Dale. You're a loyal viewer. I see you on all the shows. Thank you for watching. A lot of mixed things. JJ, Thurman Cafe in German Village is amazing. Yes, I do like Thurman, but Thurman is one of those places, at least for me, I only go there when I have people in from out of town. I don't ever think of going there on my own. I'm not like, you know what I really am in the mood for? A 3/4 pound burger with 3/4 of a pound of ham and cheese and onions on it. That's just not something I think about. Whenever somebody's in from out of town, that's one of the places that's on there. Oh, I saw it on Man vs. Food. Yeah, it's good. It's a good burger, but I'm not waiting somewhere for an hour and a half for a burger. Even for a Scoop Eats. Even for a Scoop Eats.
I'm not going to derail this with my philosophy on hamburgers, but I will say I'm Team Barcelona when it comes to German Village restaurants. And Lindy's obviously, but if I ate at Lindy's too frequently, I'd be bankrupt. So, but that's obviously another great spot down there. But I'm kind of Team Barcelona when I'm down there. I took one of the Alabama guys who we flew up here for the documentary. I took him to Barcelona after he filmed his segment for it, and I think I got bonus points there for a good recommendation. He was pretty impressed with it.
really good. And then one of the guys that was involved at Barcelona now is at Al Korea, which is on campus, and he's a member of the community for Buckeye Scoop. So I highly recommend that. Anybody who watches our shows knows that we generally dovetail to food at some point. So that's kind of
I don't want to. I can't take. It's hard. It's like I got this like devil on my shoulder. Talk about your hamburger philosophy, but it's just like we're gonna get into it. But I'll give you the cliffs. Don't pay a premium in time or money for a hamburger. The gap between a great burger and an average burger is not worth the extra time and hassle, in my opinion.
I don't disagree. I've had some really good burgers in my life. There's a place in Atlanta that only like rarely does burgers, and you have to be there at the right time for it. I'm willing to do that at some point, especially getting back out on the road covering recruiting if I can sync that up. But yeah, there's not really a reason to sit there, and I'm not going to go out and get some Wagyu burger. I'm not going to pay 4x to do that. I don't really like waiting 2 hours to sit down there. But again, if I've got people in from out of town, that's a little bit of a different story. Hey, Jordan, great to see you on the show. Yeah, we put this one together really last minute. Once Ohio State lost, a lot of upset folks out there. Wasn't sure if we were going to get any viewers. We've done okay with tonight's show, but wasn't sure what we were going to get, and we decided the last minute continuity is worth it. So glad to have you here. I'm going to ask people here to kind of answer this one. Well, I've seen some predictions on Michigan, Iowa. What are your predictions? I'll punch up some scores on there. Again, I'm going to talk about this at length on Friday. I'm going to go through a lot of the championship games at that point. But as we're going through this, what are your thoughts on that? Robert L., that's one of the places I didn't want to mention. That's really good for good German food. I agree with that one. I've only been there once. I want to go back. I'm going through the comments right now. Hamburger's easy to make it at home. Yeah, but you can kind of go back to that Eddie Murphy routine. Nobody wants the one between two slices of Wonder Bread. I want McDonald's. I want McDonald's. Michael White's not worth the hassle for the Thurman burger. Mike, I'm willing to spend an hour in line for a great brisket here in Texas, but wouldn't do that for a burger. Where in Texas are you? And without, you don't have to tell us your address or anything. And where do you get your brisket at? I've recently, in the last couple of years, I got myself a smoker. I'm smoking my own briskets. I'm way into this very expensive hobby, getting more expensive by the day. Last brisket I bought was like $95. So for just a Costco packer. Where do you get your brisket? We've kind of jumped the shark here a little bit as
I knew once I threw out the hamburger thing,
but that's
okay.
just what happens on the show sometimes, especially we're not talking about Ohio State in the top 4. I mean, Ohio State's sitting 7, probably Rose Bowl. I mean, maybe it's just me, Tim. I'm gonna kick your butt, Arby's brisket. Get out of here. Get out of here, man. Come on. All right, Mike's in Austin, so I have not been to Franklin's. And like a lot of the native Texans I talk to are like, it's good, but it's also very commercial. I mean, it's just had its whole, you're supposed to go there because you're supposed to go there. I saw a show about this like 90-year-old woman who's like this pit master, not in Austin, but like out in hill country. And I'll remember the name of the place. But it looks amazing. That's where I want to go. I don't think Ohio State's ever going to recruit a kid from this one stoplight town, though. That's the problem. Going and covering J.K. Dobbins recruiting.
I was just gonna say,
though we never went to the check stop. We never went to the check stop to get anything there. So we kind of blew that one. Not getting a lot of answers right now on Michigan, Iowa, but that's fine too. I wouldn't really want to talk about it all that much if I didn't have to. Probably still a little sore right there.
hey, I got some news here.
Okay.
We have sorry guys, trying to make sure I in-home visit tonight, Tuesday night, with Ryan Day, Ernest Green, Ernest's mom and Ernest's dad. So that's going on very shortly. Just got a text from a coach at Bosco. So Ohio State going in home with top 100 offensive lineman Ernest Green.
Certainly a position of need.
Discuss.
As Ohio State has Tegra Shabola, has Avery Henry, and has George Fitzpatrick committed so far in the class. Three offensive linemen. Tegra Shabola, is that top 100 caliber player in terms of some of the rankings. Avery Henry out there in St. Clairsville, if I'm right on that. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I there's some things I like on tape with him, but he's playing against very small classification. And then George Fitzpatrick, I don't watch a lot of Colorado football, so I don't know a whole lot about him.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I am, look, I gave it to you guys first, but gotta get this on the message board, so I had to post that.
Well, I'll filibuster here for a second as we go.
Been waiting to hear back from the Bosco guys all day. So
Yeah, well,
it's just Coach Day, not Coach Stud. I'm working on why that might be. I know there's rumors out there. I don't want to speculate on that. It's also worth remembering that the head coach gets one and the assistant coaches, I believe, get two. So they could be there. This could be strategic with not having the O-line coach there, maybe bringing him back once or twice later. So I don't want to have anyone go nuts about that just yet, but it's just Coach Day tonight.
I'm working some text messages too. Steven has a question, and we will double this back to Marc here in a second. The question is, Marc, if you could guarantee one commitment from somebody not in the boat already, who would you pick and why? But get posted to the Ask the Insiders board. We will get to that. Or if you kind of have something on the top of your head.
I got it posted. I think we're rolling on the board. I think I was short and sweet, but it's news is up there. Yeah, I'm just kind of double checking in my mind that I've got the name. I'm just thinking of, is it the right one or should I go with something else? But I don't think so. I think I would go Caden Curry. I think that's the obvious one. I don't think I've missed, like I said, Hero Canoe was very high confidence. It's still high confidence, but obviously, Lincoln Riley's still going to work that one. And I think USC still has their official if Hero wanted to take that. So I think Hero's up there, one of the higher conviction ones. But yeah, it would definitely be Caden. Look, I've had him in the class for like a year and a half. So even if I can't back off now, right? Like even if he's going somewhere else, and he's not, but even if he was, that would just be like insane. It's like I don't think I could take much credit for it at that point. I don't think you can say a kid's in for 18 months and then be right at the very end if you switch. So, but yeah, talked to his mom today, in home on Thursday with Caden and Larry Johnson and Ryan Day. So they've been treating this one. Look, you ask a coach off the record at Ohio State about Caden Curry, they're going to say that's basically an Ohio kid. They got the family ties to the Marion, Ohio area. Grandparents used to fly out to California to go to the Rose Bowls. And then Center Grove High School is roughly 3 hours from Ohio State's campus, maybe even a little bit less than that. So if they treat that kid like he's an Ohio kid.
I don't disagree. I've felt Caden Curry has been smart money has been on Ohio State there. I mean, yeah, you're always going to deal with the moments that people are going to worry about this, that, and the other. But I've never really wavered on Curry. I mean, I know people got worried about Alabama throwing its hat in the ring, and I understand that there's a certain level of recruiting PTSD when it does come to Alabama. But for every kid that Ohio State does lose there, it's not 1-to-1. Ohio State probably feels like they probably lose more, but Ohio State wins those battles too. So let's not make it sound like Ohio State just is sitting there with a nice little packed lunch and Alabama comes over and pushes them over and takes their lunch. That's not on the regular. That's not on the regular. Just kind of going through a couple bit more. I mean, we're at about an hour 5, so we'll start to decelerate because again, Marc's going to have more recruiting content coming up this week. This big week. We're 2 weeks away from National Signing Day, so we don't want to let it all out right now. I mean, there'll be more stuff here on YouTube, here on Spreaker, here on Apple iTunes, wherever you get all your contact information for podcasts. If you're watching on us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that thumbs up. That helps us with the algorithm. Hit the bell, all that good stuff. And if you're listening to us on one of the audio channels, be sure to subscribe to all of the great shows on Buckeye Scoop, including Morning Scoop, Buckeye Weekly Podcast, of course, the Big Me Kickoff, Gibbs in the Bank, Around the Oval. Lots of great content there. So that all of that helps us out, folks. Go ahead, Marc. I'm just going through. I'm
No, I
making
was
one
just
more
gonna say,
pass
and
through.
anything I tell you guys right now on recruiting is probably going to be different in 48 hours anyway at this time of year. So we'll pace ourselves. Yeah, it just, yeah, it's going to be interesting here. I think, I'm not sure when Ryan Day is going to get to some of these other guys. Let me run through what I've got right now. Like I said, I've been sitting here and trying to be too obnoxious about it, but the phone is going off quite a bit this evening. He is in with Caden Curry Thursday. He spent several hours with Hero Canoe today with Larry Johnson. Just kind of recap the day. Obviously, he's going to end up at Ernest Green's place tonight. It's going to be Ernest, his parents. I think one or two of the Bosco coaches will be over there. Thursday, I think I can repeat myself on that. Thursday's Caden Curry. So we got to see kind of where else he's going to pop up with some of these other guys. And I promise I am working on why just Day tonight. Again, could be absolute nothing burger, could be strategy for setting the in-homes with Ernest, could be strategy with Coach Stud maybe just being somewhere else tonight and making his way over later. Could be a lot of things, but I'll try and get some clarification on that on the board later.
Yeah, sometimes a little bit of divide and conquer. You have to split up. Sometimes there's something to be said too about how the visits work in terms of who can go when and where. I mean, if the head coach is that, I mean, it's you need to have, the rules are constantly evolving. So I mean, I try to keep track of all the NC2A recruiting rules, and if you blink, I mean, and like for the last couple of years, I haven't covered recruiting as closely as Marc has, and Bill Green has, and Alex Lightman have. So I'm probably even behind on some of the rules at some points. But it looks like we've kind of caught up on everything. Again, we're going to run through the rankings really quick. I'm not going to read all of them off right there. There's your 25 through 17. No Big Ten teams in that part of the list right there. You have Iowa at 13. You have Michigan State at 11. Of course, you have Ohio State at 7, and you have that team up north at 2. Ohio State on the outside looking in. It seems like it's going to be the longest of long shots. Ohio State is not drawing dead, but it's a one outer. I mean, it is a one outer, and even with that, it may be a very, it still may not happen. So, excuse me. A couple more recruiting questions, and we will go there. I did see one. Somebody was asking about Amari Abor. Thoughts on him?
Yeah. Look, as long as Larry Johnson's here, because I know there's the rumors out there. I've not heard anything about him retiring. Doesn't mean there's zero truth to it. He's going to retire eventually. We go through this. It's Thanksgiving. It's Larry Johnson's retiring, and then it's Christmas. It's part of the calendar this time of year. We go through it every year. Eventually, those people are going to be right. As long as that situation is stable, whether that's Larry Johnson doubling down that he's going to be back like he has in recent years, whether that's them having a plan in place, whatever it might be, I think they're in the best position to get Amari Abor. I've been spending a lot of time on that one just because there's so many teams still involved and there's so many coaching changes going on right now. Oklahoma thought they were out before the Lincoln Riley stuff. There were some questions about Alabama and scheme fit. How, does Alabama maybe have some guys they feel fit their scheme better? Because he's not really a stand-up edge rusher. He's also not really a guy you want to put out at that like strong side type of end where he's just taking up blockers and taking up space. So a lot of confidence that it's not going to be Alabama. Texas A&M, look at all the guys they might be getting. That's got to sort itself out. So I think you default to Ohio State, and the people that I've talked to down there. Again, I talked to like 4 different people about Amari Abor the other day for my column, and none of them were telling me it was a lock, but they all felt that Ohio State was the best bet. So that's what I'm rolling with right now. And I think, again, I think that's going to hold up unless there's some type of, coaching change at Ohio State that would impact Amari in his position.
Mike Palmer with the super chat. Good work, guys. Thanks. No, thank you, Mike, for watching the show. Hope you
Thank
become
you.
a regular around here. One last question, unless we get any super chats before we can get off of the air. Linda asking, who do you think is the best talent evaluator? And I know that's always a tough question because you can sit there and we sit there and we you look at high school kids of where they are at that point, and then you suddenly fast forward to they're in college and whether or not they develop. And being a talent evaluator and a talent developer are two different things, so it's sometimes hard to be able to draw the line in terms of that, and some positions don't lend themselves to being very easy. Offensive line recruiting, the evaluation of these high school kids is so difficult because some kids are just big and you're playing on the line because you're big, and you have to completely break them down and rehang the weight on them because it's so much bad weight. So good luck with this one, Mark, because I don't know what my guess is on this one.
What what is the context of this? Is this like the best, like the head coach that evaluates talent the best in
I
college
think it's probably
football?
talking
Is this the
about
best
assistant. I mean, I'm
the Ohio
assuming
State
it's on the
staff?
Ohio State staff. I mean, just being an Ohio State show.
That's a really good question. I have always, um, gosh, look, they've recruited a lot of top flight guys at every position, so it's really hard to like. It's not like they've got a guy who just takes 2 and 3 star kids and makes them all America. They recruit a lot of 4 and 5 star guys. I mean, almost all of their classes are 4 and 5 star guys. I think Ryan Day has made some really good decisions at quarterback over the years. Passed on some guys that maybe had the rankings. He comes up with C.J. Stroud, who was not a heavily recruited player early on. And then I would look, obviously I think very highly of Larry Johnson and what he's done over the years. Yes, forever. Yes, he's had Chase Young and the Bosa's and guys like that, but he's definitely found some gems over the years. He had, especially even if you go back to Penn State, some of those guys were not, Tamba Hali was not a 5 star kid. He's taken a lot of 3 star guys, put them in the NFL. Devon Hamilton was not, a particularly highly rated guy, got him in the NFL. So I would say those are two that initially come to mind. But this is kind of a low hanging fruit one because he seems to just get every kid he wants, and a lot of them are 5 stars. But has Brian Hartline like missed yet? Like on, maybe you could maybe argue Mookie Cooper, but I don't know that he's actually missed on Mookie Cooper. I just think there were circumstances there, and between that and the fit of the offense, that
Right, they just
I think
didn't.
that
He wasn't
you know
necessarily something that they were. I mean, they'd
it's
had
not
such a hard time getting these big receivers, and now they have all these big receivers, and now they don't necessarily want the small receiver.
right. And so I think the jury's still out on what I mean. Mookie Cooper kind of being a great player somewhere, but it's like, how many guys like the guys he's and again, it's yes, they're all like top 100 guys, so they should be good, but it's like law of averages would say eventually he's going to have like a major bust there and in before someone like prematurely jumps all over Julian Fleming. But a lot of those guys have exceeded or certainly lived up to their ranking, so he's got a really high success rate.
Absolutely, I mean Brian Hartline. He's had his choices of guys. I mean, you could sit there and see the guys that maybe that they weren't able to get, but it's because of everything else that they've had. I mean, Luther Burden committed to Oklahoma very early in the process. I mean, he obviously came off of their board prior to everything falling apart there, but you look at what Ohio State's been able to do. I mean, and yes, you mentioned Julian Fleming, who's dealt with injuries his entire Ohio State career, really has not had an opportunity. Got his first touchdown in the Michigan State game. You look at his recruitment and you rewind about a month, maybe just a month before that. Everybody thought they were going to get Raheem Jarrett. They thought that Julian Fleming was going to go to Penn State and Ohio State was going to get Raheem Jarrett. So once again, Ohio State recruiting at the receiver position has just been lights out. And, the fact that nobody talks about Jaden Ballard, I think Jaden Ballard is a tremendous player. I mean, he just can't separate himself from the kids that he was recruited with. So we don't talk about him as much.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent in that room, and again, you look at the class they just brought in, and I think we've already seen enough out of Abuka and Harrison to know that they're going to be players. I don't think we can necessarily pencil him into the first round just yet, but I think, I think it's pretty obvious already. We know Ibuka and Harrison were not misses. So and then I go back to Jackson Smith and Jigba. They offered him before Texas did. They swiped it, and I think Jackson at that point was a high 3 when they first got in on him. And I remember telling people to Ohio State after I think we were down there together, right? Didn't we see him at practice,
Yeah.
spring practice on Southern Swing? And I reached out to some people at Ohio State. I said, look, I know Julian Fleming's ranked what he's ranked. I know G. Scott Jr. is ranked what he's ranked. I'm not so sure that, Smith and Jigba isn't the best one. And as I saw him at Army Bowl and everything, we saw him at, I think, the Rivals 5-star, that we saw him several times after that. And each time I got more and more impressed with him. And by the end of the Army Bowl, I was like, man, this guy's best receiver in their class. And that was, again, that hindsight, you're going to look at that and be like, oh, that's just Brian Hartline getting a top 50 player and, just not messing it up. Like, no, that is not what happened there. That was a 3-star kid who Texas didn't want at the time. That Hartline saw something in, and now first round pick in 2023, maybe not beyond the second round, I don't think.
No, I mean, there'll be the people that'll be like, well, how will he test and blah, blah, blah. And, what are his measurables? But I mean, he has 80 catches this year. Next year, I mean, you sit there, does he play inside and outside? I mean, where do you put Ibuka? I mean, you could sit there and really line JSN up anywhere. I mean, it's going to be amazing to see what's there. And I remember seeing him at his high school in Rockwall, Texas, and he just caught everything. I mean, his catch radius was just enormous. I mean, he would sit there and go and just pick balls out of the air. It was, you go a little star hunting. You sit there and you're like, well, G. Scott is this, and Julian Fleming is that, and this is good. I mean, if we don't get out to Rockwall, it's all good. It's fine. And Lord knows Dallas traffic is the worst. So I'm sure we probably got stuck in traffic at some point. And we got out to the school. And I mean, I walked away incredibly impressed with him just at that point. And if Garrett Wilson and if Chris Olave are saying, oh, we know we're good. We know we're first rounders, but this kid is next level. They know a thing or two.
Yeah, and I was watching his feet that day. That's the thing with people are going to talk about the testing because he's not going to be 6'2". He's probably going to be a 4. He's definitely not going to be a 4.3 guy. I don't know if he'll be a 4.4. He might be a low 4.5 guy. But where he'll test that short burst, quickness, the shuttle. He'll kill that. I mean, unbelievable quickness. So yes, there will be areas that he doesn't knock people's socks off testing, but there will, like I said, he will have one of the best shuttle times. He will absolutely in the draft. I don't care what year he's in the draft. He will have one of the best shuttle times in that draft. He had an elite shuttle time in high school. He was like a 4.1 short shuttle guy. There's gonna be things that he does that will translate to a combine scenario situation.
Yeah, and I think he'll do really well, like in that little ladder that they have them going there, and one side and the other side. I think he'll do just fine. He'll do just fine there. But we are here at about an hour 20, so we're going to call it a show. I want to thank everybody for joining us here on short notice here on Big Me Kickoff as we went through the college football playoff rankings for about 30 minutes, and then we kind of talked about burgers and recruiting the rest of the way. I want to thank Marc Givler for joining us on the show. It's always good to have the boss man here, and we will do this again here very soon. I promise you'll see Marc on more content coming up this week, and you will see me on Friday as well on Big Me Kickoff. But until then, I want to thank everybody and have a wonderful night.